Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to discuss 5 low or no budget ways to get PR for your business in the UK. So I'll give you a little bit of context here. My business is called Janet's List and we help people to discover and buy from amazing brands by Black women and women of color from the UK. We do this in 3 main ways: through our pop-up concept stores. The last one was in Somerset House, which was amazing. We have our e-commerce website and we also have strategic retail partnerships. Obviously in 2020 there was a racial reckoning, so there was a lot of focus on Black-owned business. But before that, it was actually quite challenging to get PR, mainstream PR coverage. And it's something that I've had to be really strategic about. And it's something that I feel quite passionate about because it can be quite transformative for a business. So in this video, I'm sharing 5 low or no budget ways of securing PR for your independent business. And so one of the things that I offer is a PR course called How to Strategically Approach PR as an Independent Business. So if this is something that you're interested in, please stick around and you'll be able to see that right at the end of the video. And I'm also going to drop the details of the online course in the description box below and potentially a discount code as well. So for many businesses, particularly small independent businesses, trying to secure PR for your business is something that you will spend a bit of time on. You're either having to think about spending a lot of time on it or spending a lot of money on it. So at this end, if you have the money and the budget for it, you might be thinking about working with a PR consultant, perhaps working with an agency, although that, the cost tends to be quite high for that. So most people think about working with a PR consultant to begin with, and it's certainly something that I've done in the past. At this other extreme end, you might be thinking that actually I don't want to spend a lot of money on PR, but what that means is that you have to spend a lot of time into trying to secure PR. So it's important to understand that interplay between time and money. Another important thing to think about PR, everyone assumes that you want to do it because you just want to maximize sales. But with PR, you're actually playing the long game here. It's about building brand awareness, getting journalists who, most times are well respected to say insightful things about your brand. It's about improving SEO so that when people search for your brands, they can see that content coming through. All of these things together ultimately lead to sales, but don't go into PR thinking that the only reason you want to do it is to secure sales. That's very short-term thinking. And with PR, you have to play the long game. So one of the things about securing PR is that you have to get the basics right. There's no point starting to secure PR if you don't have a good website, if you don't have excellent professionally shot photography. If you have a product-based business, it's so important to make sure that you have cutout photography of all of your products. But you also have to have that brand strength and that brand reputation. Unless you have those basics right, I would say focus on getting that sorted before starting to secure PR for your business. So if you've got the basics right, the other thing to think about is that journalists are always interested in a story. They do not care that you've launched your website. Unless it's something really good or really interesting, then they might take a look. But although it's exciting for you as a business, and it's a big milestone for you that you've launched your website, that's not necessarily something that a journalist is going to be jumping up. The question that you have to ask yourself is, so what? Why should they write a piece about you? And it's important to ensure that you have a good story that you can wrap around the angle. And so now we're going to discuss the 5 low or no budget options for PR if you live in the UK. These are quite specific to the United Kingdom because some of those resources are specific to the country, but the principles are applicable across the board. So the first tip is to secure PR through the back door. Now, what do I mean by this? Quite simply, it's putting your business forward for opportunities that you can get PR in return. And 2 easy examples are to apply for business competitions and to apply for grants. Now, both of those take time, and that's what I mean. If you are going to look at low or no budget options, it takes a lot of time. In my experience, it is never a waste of time to sit down and articulate why your business is as great as you think it is, what it is that you bring to the market, the problem that you solve. Because even if you're not successful in this application, that information puts you in a much better position to apply for the next application. This is something that we have experienced at Janet's List. Quite early on, I think in my first year, I spent a solid month just researching and applying for business competitions and grants. Now, if you live in London and if you're over a certain age, you will find that that automatically excludes you for a lot of competitions. And I remember that one of the competitions that I had applied for was won by Heathrow. So a few months later, I completely forgot about it. I got an email saying private and confidential. I actually thought I was being sued. I was so worried. But when I opened the email, they told me that I was one of 20 people who had succeeded in a competition and I was going to get a giant check of £2,000. Funny enough, I still have that check here. And it was just a lovely opportunity, not just to get an injection of cash into the business, but also all of the press that came with it. There was a press release. All of a sudden, I had something that was a story that I could pitch to other people. And that's what I mean by getting PR through the back door. Another fantastic way to obtain PR for your business is to collaborate with a partner who has a bigger profile than you do. Now, partnerships don't happen overnight. You have to do the work steadily and consistently for some time so that people can see what you have to offer, and when the right opportunity comes up for a partnership, you both know that it's in front of you and that you should jump on it and make something of it. In 2020, Janet's List was really fortunate to collaborate with Coco de Mer. Coco de Mer is a luxury lingerie boutique that is all about female power and female pleasure. And actually, when we sat down and we looked at it, even though on the face of it, it seems quite different, we realized that our brands really have female empowerment at its heart. And so our idea for collaboration turned into a month-long physical retail installation of 12 Janet's List brands in their boutique in Covent Garden in London, which was really amazing. As part of the collaboration, Coco de Mer very graciously provided us with PR support and amplified us on all of the social media channels. The Instagram, for example, has over 100k followers. So that was a really amazing opportunity for Janet's List. That said, with PR, you have to be strategic. And one of the strategic decisions that I made and suggested was that we should have this collaboration in October, which in the UK is Black History Month. I thought that that would put us in a better position to pitch ourselves to press. And it just goes back to that idea that I talked about earlier about having a story. It's so important to have something that you can offer journalists that they can then take up and find a way to create a story around it. In fact, that strategy paid off. We got coverage in Condé Nast Traveler, in Country Town and Home, and that's where collaboration is really important. None of those titles had covered Janet's List before, so even for us, we were getting our name out there in audiences that just didn't know about us and wouldn't have heard about us otherwise. My favorite piece of press from this collaboration was this article from Harper's Bazaar. They invited me as the founder of Janet's List to do a feature on 5 wellness brands that were on my radar. This was a really fantastic opportunity to feature amazing brands that were part of the collaboration on Janet's List in Harper's Bazaar. That article did really well, and to this day it continues to drive traffic to Janet's List website. If you're enjoying this video, there's definitely more where that came from. Please feel free to subscribe using the button below. The third way to secure low or no budget PR is to have a strong network. Again, this is not something that just happens overnight. It's relationships that you're invested in and that you've cultivated. It's supporting people through the events. It's suggesting people whenever opportunities for press come up. These are all ways in which you can build your network. So I'm going to give you a really good example of this. One of the best pieces of PR that Janet's List got in October 2020 was with Red Magazine. This piece of coverage actually came through an introduction made by Vanessa Sanyauke, who is the CEO of Girlstock London, someone that I've known for many years and that I now call a friend. Vanessa was approached by someone at Red Magazine and she said to them, actually, you probably want to speak to Janet, who's the founder of Janet's List. This is something that could slot quite nicely into that. And when Red Magazine got in touch, we had a bit of a back and forth, and in the end, they decided to do a full page spread in the print magazine, which was great, not just for Janet's List, but also for the brands that were covered. I had so many people get in touch with me who I hadn't heard from for quite a while. We saw an uptick in sales for the brands that were featured. And like I said, sales is not the only reason. When press leads to an uptick in sales. That's a bonus, that's a good thing, it's something to be enjoyed, but it's not the sole reason to go for it. But what I know is that I would not have gotten that piece of press other than for Vanessa graciously making that introduction for me. And so that's why it's so important to invest in a professional business network. And it does take a bit of time before that happens. And I think also with networks, it's so important not to be transactional about it. You know, you can't be like, oh, I gave so-and-so this and they haven't given me that. It's not about that at all. It's just finding people whose work that you really admire, that you really respect. You're happy to make suggestions back and forth. You're happy and confident to make introductions back and forth. And over time, that tends to pay off. Another low budget option in the UK is joining private PR Facebook groups. I'm only in one, and as far as I can tell, it's one of the best ones that I know. It's called Lightbulb. It's run by a journalist called Charlotte Crisp. I think she does a really fantastic job of moderating this group. But what she's done is she's created a space where businesses and journalists are able to pitch to each other. If journalists are looking for a particular story, they mention that in the group. But also businesses have the opportunity to place any carefully thought out pitches in the group as well. So the thing that I found most useful from bringing this group is being able to make that connection between what's happening in the outside world. So let's say there's a particular topic that is in the news and everyone's talking about it. I've then been able to see how journalists translate that to pitches and stories that they want to write, which you can then respond to as a business if it's something that you feel that you're able to respond to. And just being in the group has really improved my knowledge and understanding of that process. And so even for that alone, I have found the group to be a really valuable and useful resource. I also, just by virtue of being a Black-owned business that features other businesses by Black women and women of color from the UK, I have a very specific network. And so there are times when if there's no one in the group who can assist, on at least one or two occasions, I've been able to connect journalists with other businesses that I know. And so that's a win-win situation. So just going back to that point about good karma and the network, you know, if a journalist is struggling to find a particular case study and that person is not available in the group, then I'm happy to dip in and offer an option from my network that can assist. So again, this really works if you're prepared to put the time in, making sure that you're keeping an eye on the pitches that are coming in, making sure that you're responding to pitches where you think that you're a good fit. The thing with PR is that there are no guarantees. One of the things about pitching to journalists, particularly when you're using low or no budget options, is that you have to develop a thick skin and you just cannot take things personally if you're not picked for a particular feature or if you're not picked for some coverage. It's just about having that stamina to put yourself out there, and hopefully your story will be a good fit and will resonate with the journalists and they might run with it. The other thing as well is, even if you don't get that press coverage immediately, if you get on with the journalists and you have a good relationship, they might actually suggest you for other pitches in the future. This happened with Janet's List. In the past, when I'd had a PR consultant, I'd had a meeting with a journalist that didn't lead to coverage at the time. And then fast forward a couple of years later, Janet's List got coverage in Grazia, and I just didn't know how it had come about. And it was that journalist who had remembered me from then and put me forward for another press opportunity. So again, even though something doesn't come through immediately, you never know what will happen in the future. So a couple of key facts about Lightbulb. I think it costs about £5 or £10 per month to join. Quite often there's a waiting list. They are very selective about who gets picked into Lightbulb. It's very tightly moderated, which I think is an excellent thing. So it feels very much like a safe space. My fifth suggestion, so this isn't a no budget option, but it's a low budget option. And this is using a service like PR Dispatch. So how PR Dispatch works is that they give you a certain number of press contacts every month. And alongside this, they give you some training on how to best approach the press. And it's a really fantastic way of being able to pitch to press in magazines, in newspapers, to respond to press requests when they come in. PR Dispatch is not a no budget option. It's definitely a lowish budget option. It costs £59 per month plus VAT, and it's paid on a quarterly basis. And so if you have a little bit of budget that you can put towards PR, but also have a lot of time that you can put towards pitching and putting yourself forward for any press opportunities that come through, And if you're a product-based business, then it's quite a good option for businesses that are based in the UK. But again, you have to do a lot of the heavy lifting yourself. You have to make sure that you have a system in place to pitch press regularly, make sure that your website is looking good and you have good cutouts, etc. So I know I said I had 5 low or no budget options. I'm going to talk about one bonus one, and this is a hashtag called JournoRequest, and it's a hashtag that journalists use on Twitter if they're looking for a very specific type of subject. So it can be time consuming, it can be a little bit spammy at times, but occasionally you might just find that one pitch that you're a really good fit for. So I occasionally look at JournoRequest to see what pitches are out there. In the past, I've actually recommended someone to a JournoRequest who then ended up getting a half page of coverage in the Observer. It's about that good karma and just making sure that it goes around. But JournoRequest is definitely an easy one. The way to do it is to look for the hashtag JournoRequest on Twitter, look for the latest pitches that have come through, and just go through those and see if any of those are applicable to your business. And quite often in the JournoRequest, they'll tell you exactly how they want you to respond. So if they say, please send me an email, send an email. Don't slide into the DMs. If they say DM me first, do that. Just follow the instructions of how it is that they want to hear from you. So if you're new to this channel, you'll know that in every video, we have a spotlight on a Black female-owned business from the UK, a business by a woman of color, or a business that has collaborated with Janet's List. And actually today I'm going to feature Janet's List. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about our self-paced PR course, which is how to take a strategic approach to PR for your independent business. There are a lot of courses out there that tell you how to do your own PR, but I think as a business owner, what's missing from the landscape is something about how to strategically approach it, how to work out what is the best option for your business at a particular stage, what you need to do to make sure that you're best placed to take advantage of PR, but also just practical things like how to prepare for television interviews, how to prepare for radio interviews, how to prepare for written interviews. I'm a former family law barrister, so making pitches and speaking was something that perhaps I have years of practice and has come much easier for me. But I found that all of the tools and techniques that I employed in my previous career have been really useful, particularly when it comes to preparing for press interviews. And so that's something that I share in the online course. So in December 2020, I was so thrilled to be one of the first experts selected for Alan's Academy in the US. If you haven't come across Alan's Academy, it's founded by Alan Hamilton, who is the venture capitalist and the founder of Backstage Capital and has done some amazing work. And so she picked my strategic PR course as one of the inaugural courses for this expert business-led online course platform. So hopefully that has given you a bit of information about the PR course. One of the great things about self-paced online courses is I know how busy everyone is. Sometimes people are really strapped for time. The great thing about this is you can do it at your own time, in your own pace, and you can do it as many times as you wish. You can go back if you want to refresh your memory. So it's something that people who've done the course have found it really useful and helpful. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments box below. Send me an email on the email address that I'm going to drop into the description box, and let me know if you have any questions. So that's it for this video. There's definitely more where that came from. If you're interested in business content, I recently released a video on productivity. We also did a really interesting book club video on the Fear Fighter Manual by Lavia Ajayi, and you can watch either of those videos on the YouTube channel. Thank you, and I will see you there.